Welcome to day 5, mass collaboration and machine learning, our debrief for the day's activities. We will spend about 15 minutes in this space. Then we've got a 15-minute debrief for the evening. We'll make sure everyone deletes the data. Then we have to do final checks on all of the activities you were supposed to do this week to make sure Matt and Chris and our team can get things all set up for next week. And then we will send you off to your Friday. So we're going to start by noting the names of our different teams. So we've got Team Fufu, Team Jollof Rice, Team Red Red, Team Kelewele. I just love saying that word, Kelewele. Team Tuozafi, Team Banku, and Team Shoko. We also have one additional team. Our undergraduate event staff decided to jump into the fray. They left me to my own devices today. So they will also be presenting. So they'll be our, we'll shove them in the middle somewhere when they're not expecting it. All right, so we need a volunteer for our first team. While you're deciding if you want to volunteer, I hope you've had a chance to take a look at the questions that we put into Slack for you. So what we're going to be looking for you to discuss is some combination of the following questions. How did you go about preparing the data file? Were there unexpected hurdles when preparing the data file? How did you address them? It is likely that groups took a range of approaches, so we're interested in your particular approach. How did you go about the predictive modeling exercise? What aspects of the exercise were successful from the standpoint of a participant? These are going to be put in the chat box for you. If you were organizing this mass collaboration, what would you change to make the experience better? So that's, remember, we're collaborating across all sites, everywhere in the world that is doing this. And then finally, are there other questions we might tackle more successfully by working together than by working alone? So we're excited to hear what you all think. So we will start it off with, let's see, I'm going to adjust here. So I've got, Marissa's got her hand up. So Marissa, go ahead, turn on your camera. Well, your camera's already on. Go ahead and we'll spotlight you and introduce your team and tell us how it went.
Yeah, so my team, I have Nicole and Erica on my team. If they want to come up and join me, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. We've kind of really been chatting all day about what we wanted to share. So one of the first things that we did this morning during the morning session was to really look through the data and see what the variables were, because we wanted to have some sort of theoretical reasoning as to why we were including certain variables in our model to predict our outcomes of interest. So we decided very early on to only focus on 3 outcomes of interest, just so that we can really put time into thinking about GPA, about grit, and also about eviction. So as we did that and really thought about that, we started looking through the variables, and then we ran against break. So then when we came back from break, what we did is, as a group, we had a Google Doc where we thought of some different constructs we were interested in and to find items that measure that construct within the data. And so what we did is we really dug through and really thought about things such as, I'll bring up our Google Doc, things such as bullying, how that might contribute to GPA. We looked at incarceration and how that might contribute to grit. Just theoretically, we thought about race, we thought about gender, and so on and so forth. But what we noticed as our biggest hurdles were just lack of knowledge of the data, specifically because when you're looking at secondary data, there are a lot of unanswered questions of what does this acronym mean? Or who is the respondent? Is it the child? Is it the parent? Is it the mother? Is it the father? We found out we couldn't even have a variable for gender because that was not included in the data. So we thought that that was a huge shortcoming from this activity of trying to figure out, kind of really get into the data, but figuring out what we know and what we don't know just based off of what is there. So since we spent a lot of time really thinking about and being really strategic about what variables we were considering an interest, we did not get to any modeling, but we did start with some cleaning. And that's another thing that we kind of, I wanted to share just to show my group of how long cleaning data can take. For me personally, when I've cleaned data, I can do it in R, but I prefer SPSS because it's easier. Cleaning data in R does take a lot. And I typically spend a week, maybe two, to clean data. So I just wanted to share our cleaning process just so that just to get an idea of how long it can take. This was just selecting the variables once we defined the variables that we were interested in, and then also literally this many lines of code just to clean 3 variables of income, race, and ethnicity. So because a lot of things were missing, so for example, there were not -9s were missing, -3s, -2s, -1s. So since we were being really strategic about theoretical reasons as to why we were choosing these variables, we decided to make our own data frame, which would require a lot of extensive cleaning in order to do so, which of course is beyond the scope of today's class when we had time for. I feel like I'm missing other important things that we discussed. So if anyone, Nicola, Erica, want to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I think that, so we decided to focus on 3 of the outcomes. So GPA, grid, and eviction were the ones that we focused on. And I think that as we started pulling up some of the variables, we kept thinking that there was just so much overlap in them. And the more we got to know the variables, the more we wanted to include and thought they were related. But like Marissa said, like there were a few variables where there were like a few different options that we could have used, but because there was more information missing on how they were coded or what they meant, we felt limited in that sense. And then I think race was another one that came up just in terms of like how do we go about recoding that, and then we talked more about how many studies often just combine some of the lesser, like the smaller groups or the multicultural groups, for example, and how that can be another like big limitation. And then the gender variable was another one that Nicole pointed out, just like the importance of that for grid and GPA, just like school performance overall, for example, and how that's a big limitation into that we can't include that in our models.
Yes, I just wanted to say today was just really great in terms of having time to theorize together as a group. So thanks.
Thank you very much. We're going to have Elaine jump in next with Team Twozafi. That's my best guess on pronunciation. I'm going to populate with all the teams on the list now so everybody knows their order. Go ahead and we'll get you up here. Spotlight, Elaine. Go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. So we went on a different approach. We saw we will really utilize R and coding, so we didn't spend much time on theorizing the variables, both because we don't have enough background and also limited knowledge to go through a data set that's rich with all the variables. But echoing the last group, I was curious, the data set doesn't have gender for the children. I think it does it? Anyway, yeah, I agree that gender will be definitely interesting to look at, specifically with like self-control, GPA, and grids. Male and female kids definitely perform differently. There's a huge gender gap. So anyhow, so I want to show, just screen share our code. And we did build a model, and that's consistent with the example where we predicted GPA was mother's education, the vocabulary test scores, mother's race, and relationship between the mother and father at the birth of the children. So after we done the prediction, after we done the modeling, we use the prediction function to get our predictions based on the modeling, and we input it back to a data frame called our prediction. Then we did two things. First, we compared it. We merged our predictions with the prediction provided in the data files, and we compared. It looks like our predictions, we graphed it out. Looks like our predictions map pretty well onto the prediction that was provided. And then we tried was converging our predictions with the training data set, which is actually was a God for the population that they were looking at. So training data set was the actual data. And it looks like our prediction was far less compatible with the training data. That goes along with what was communicated with the video for today's session, that none of the models generated from the fragile family data set were good predictors, or good enough that it explain more than 30% of variances in the actual data set. So I think a takeaway message from today for us was that even when you collected a lot of data, and when we have a very fancy machine learning tool or models, sometimes it's hard to predict real life events given the complications with the issues we're looking at. So I guess for the future, just as the researchers will recommend, maybe more interviews, in-depth qualitative analysis need to be done to figure out what are some of the other potential predictors that were missing from the data set that is worth collecting in the future. Yeah. Oh, I realized I didn't share my screen, did I? So anyway, that was our prediction mapping pretty perfectly onto the prediction that was provided. And this is a graph where the actual training data doesn't map onto our prediction very well. Yeah, so that's all I have. I will leave it for my teammates to address if there's something I missed. Yeah.
I feel like that was pretty much everything we had. I would just say that, especially working sometimes with someone else's data, I felt like for me, I spent a lot of time just trying to decipher what was what, because it was kind of difficult to see. Because at first, like from the outset, because I ended up once again having to update a lot of my plugins, it was just like straight up, I don't know which file is supposed to be the right one. And then once you get into the file, you then have to kind of decipher all of these really like unique is a word, coding things, which were kind of not very straightforward to do. Like, I feel like if we had more time, like, because I feel like a lot of the people that use this data set have, like Eileen was saying, like months or, you know, like a long time to kind of settle into it. That might have, in that case, it might be reasonable, but to kind of like jump in and then have to decipher, I'm going to say that was the whole morning. Like, that's gone. And then in the afternoon, I feel like I was able to make a lot more progress.
Yeah, I think I just want to echo, I felt like I spent a lot more time with the questionnaire open and the code book open, just trying to like decipher the data set. I've been having my eye on the fragile family data set for a while, but realizing that I need a lot more time to really engage with it and play around with some of the variables. I just to address one of the questions, I think another question that we might tackle more. I thought it was great that we were able to do it in a group because we were just talking about different variables that we could put into the model and also could predict. I I think similar to what Kimberly said, like more time probably would have been great just to kind of play with, like throughout the week would have been great. Like, you know, obviously we have the schedule to like prepare a little bit, but it would have made more sense to like spend playing with the data more to prepare for the challenge today.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to introduce Team Kelewele, which is Yandu. Let's go ahead and get Yandu and team up on screen. Team members, help me with the spotlights here. Thank you.
There's also Todd and Ibukan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Take it away.
So first question, preparing the data file. So we had started like echoing this last team that went. It took us a while also to figure out what CSV files we were supposed to look at, reading over the README files and just making sense of what we were looking at. Somewhat early on, we had decided to focus on GPA, just the outcome of GPA. And we first started looking through the raw data and thought we could find GPA. We realized we couldn't. Then we just scrapped the idea of cleaning and went to the prepared data, and then ended up kind of doing a mishmash of the two in pulling some variables in the model that we actually did. What other things? Oh, we did end up running a model, not using the predicted or trained data that was given, but we ended up talking with one of the TAs that was here today, and he had told us about random forests, and we'd started running that sort of model, which was a good learning experience, I think, for all of us. From that, we learned that the random forests actually, or this machine learning model, did worse at predicting GPA compared to our just simple linear regression. I don't know if my teammates want to add anything to that.
Yes, I can. Yeah, we looked at the sum of the squared residual, the sum of the residual squared errors, and the random forest model always had higher errors than the regression models that we ran. I think one of the questions as well was around what aspects of exercise, like what could we change? I think having clearer documentation on some of the things. So one of the variables that we wanted to bring in was we were looking for a construct around numeracy. There were various constructs where we had the Peabody picture vocabulary test, but we didn't have early indicators around numeracy. And so we found hand-eye coordination, and we included that in one of the models, but the code book didn't specify like when was the hand-eye coordination measure collected, what were the actual levels of it. So we included it in the model, but we don't actually have value labels for each of the values, which is kind of problematic. And I think also even another group had mentioned gender. I don't think race of the child was specifically there. It's just like, are you going with the race of the mother or the race of the father? And then like, well, how do you get into different combinations of that? So I think like the other group, we wanted to just kind of get into the R. So we tabled some of those things, but they're really important issues. And if we wanted to like move forward with that, we want to think more critically about how to do that, and having a bit more context for the code book for like what the variables are that we're looking at.
Yeah, I would just like to second what my group member have said. I think one of the things that also helped us in selection of our variables was we had some kind of theoretical framework of variables that could predict GPA. Since some of us has research related to that, and that really helped us to decide which variables we want to include in our model to predict our outcome. And like Todd said, the TA was able to help us out, and we were able to make some prediction using the random forest to know which ones in the order of importance were necessary to predict the outcome that we decided to choose. It was an interesting learning time for me personally.
Thank you. We're going to now jump to Team Jollof Rice. From what I've heard, there is an argument happening about what country owns jollof rice. I don't know if that will be solved during this session. but we're looking for Yesh and Regis. Let's go ahead and work on spotlighting them.
I'm not sure if, I think Yesh and Abiadam was also in our group. I think she.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do not know which country.
Ibukun says Nigeria, I guess. Some say Ghana. We will defer to that.
Okay, so everyone else before me is giving me life because we also kind of struggled a little bit with understanding exactly kind of where we were going and what we were doing, which data set to use. We ended up not cleaning the data because that definitely would have taken us a considerable amount of time. We wanted to just go ahead and make sure to get into the code and try to do our best to kind of submit something. So we ended up focusing on just eviction because that emerged early as a kind of an interest. And Abiadam produced a beautiful markdown file for us that we all kind of collectively added to. And we looked at, let me share it actually. We looked at eviction, and because it was because it's an either or, we ended up doing a logistic regression against some of these other variables, including race and the constructed variables around poverty. And as you can see, nothing was, terribly significant in this, except for perhaps race and of course poverty. But we had some of the same struggles. Mostly it was trying to understand, how most of these were kind of related. We got some great help from the TAs in terms of constructing our code, and then we ended up uploading it, and it seems like I think where are we at now? We did pretty well, I think, in predicting based on the uploads. We did pretty well with predicting eviction, I guess, but it's not terribly strong, as you can kind of see from some of these p-values. But that's kind of where we were with all of this. I don't know if there's anything else I can answer.
Thank you very much, Regis, for representing Team Joe LaFraise. So we're going to move on to the event staff team. I feel like we need to unmute and give them some encouragement. This team is made up of 2 recent BA graduates and 3 undergraduates. So this has never happened at a SICSS before. So I think they deserve some love before they start talking. Please unmute and yell or scream or clap, please. All right, introducing Amanda, Ava, Amber, and Christina. I guess I have to spotlight you because you can't spotlight yourselves, I guess, right? Let's see, I gotcha. All right, here comes, got Amber, Ava, Christina, who took the day off from work to be with us here today. There we go. We're just missing Maddie, but this is the dream team. Take it away, ladies.
All right, team Boboi and Pinky in the house. So like everyone else, it seems we spent a lot of time at first figuring out what we were looking at in the data, what the variables meant, and then deciding what variables you wanted to compare. So it's been really valuable to hear some of the questions that all of you were asking, and like the critical inquiries that came up in your group. Eventually, we decided we want to compare mother's household income and poverty threshold to the layoff variable. One of those is a continuous variable, and the other one is a discrete variable with binary responses. And that's where we kind of ran into some issues in how to visualize that or create a model for that. So shout out to TAs, Phil Kilwalt and Peter Mariani, who jumped in and were able to help us with figuring out a model. Does someone else with better ability to describe the R stuff want to jump in?
So I guess the first thing that we did when we were still kind of lost and not really sure what to do with the data is that we wanted to visualize the data that we did have and see if we could just kind of get a sense of what the trend might be by plotting a scatter plot. So the scatter plot of the ratio that Amanda mentioned, which is mother's income over the poverty threshold versus we plotted it against the layoff. So then I guess I can share my screen as to what that looked like. It's this thing here in the corner. And sort of as you can see, like for the layoffs, for no layoffs happening, we couldn't really determine much based on the density of the graph, but we can look at where the layoffs did happen. And we can see that as the ratio increased, so this means that the mother's income was higher, it's less dense. So we can kind of see like there is like a sort of general trend there, and that's what we wanted to focus on. And I'll pass it to Amber, hopefully, to explain the linear regression part.
So after thinking about the variables I want to include, we use the linear regression model for our prediction. And I think during the process, our view of dealing with this kind of like jump around between a data science perspective and like a social science perspective, like social science perspective, as bit by bit has discussed that. We tried at first to look at what variables that could support our model. And then after that, we'll look at which model will help us better make a prediction. That's also the reason that we jump from a linear regression model to a generalized logistic model. So yeah, that the TAs helps us a lot in figuring out what model that would best fit our data, and then how that prediction tell us about the variables.
Thank you, team, event staff. Unless Christina, did you want to jump in there? Are you good?
I think everyone brought up all the things that we learned in our course of action. So yeah.
I want to shout out Christina as our Stack Overflow researcher. She was very helpful with that, and come into the chat with, oh, here's some different models we could use. So that was really valuable.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, event staff. I am so proud. Some of these folks have been research assistants in my lab for 2-3 years. Amanda's been around for about 5 or 6 now. And they're available for PhD programs, people. All of them, please. I'll send emails. Fantastic, great job. All right, Team Shoko, please. Let's find you in here. Who's Team Shoko? Where are y'all? That would be Ben and Swazik.
Yes.
I hear you, Ben. Look, we're going to look for you so we can spotlight you. Let's see. Got to have your camera on first. There you are. Fantastic. Take it away.
So at first we were trying to figure out some logistics. So we loaded the 3 data sets, the train, the predict, and then the background one. When we looked at it and saw there were 13,000 variables, we were kind of overwhelmed. So we knew we probably wouldn't be able to deal with it. So for that first hour, we tried to think of a game plan if we did want to deal with it. And so we thought about how can we figure out, like we looked at the code book to see what the variables are. And we tried to create like this tool called a DAG that I know about, where you try to create like an actual causal framework as to what variables you think should be included and what variables you should actually be conditioning on. And after we did that, we thought of the strategies of how to deal with so many different variables. And I actually have never been able to wrap my mind around how you actually look at a data set that has multiple different years. So we kind of talked about how you would do that. Like, would you, I guess, create an average variable based on all the years and then use that as a training versus, or the train set versus predict set. So after we did that, then we transitioned into looking at the actual data. We looked at, why does it say that? Oh. And then when we were trying to train, we were working through doing some different diagrams to try to understand. So we wanted to look at GPA versus the grit variable. And we were kind of having trouble because we weren't really understanding why the graphs were the way they were. But then we went and looked at like how the variables are coded, whether they're binary, whether they're continuous. So we worked with that a little bit to fix some of the graphs. And then we were working on training models. And so we tried multiple different approaches because sometimes like we couldn't really understand the code. And so we never really got an end result, but that's pretty much what we did throughout the entire time. And so when we were doing the training, we were just using the set that was given, the train set that was given to us, the train data set.
Thank you, Benjamin and team. Let's see, let me make sure I get this right. That was Team Shoko. So next we'll go to Team Banku. So that's Troy and Regina. Let's remove that spotlight. Let me see if I can find Troy. There's Regina. Fantastic, thank you. Highlight you and also Troy. There we go. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think we can echo everyone's like struggles with trying to identify what the data were. I know when Regina opened up the code book, it like froze and she was never really to access the code book to see what the different variables were. And I think we did spend a little bit of time trying to think about what variables would be potentially interesting to use to estimate or predict grit. Our group was particularly interested in that and thinking about resilience. And then we spent a lot of time trying to process the data and getting it all cleaned up. We did, yeah, like others, we did use Google and Stack Overflow to figure out what's the best way to do this. Because there were several attempts where we would remove like 90+% of the NAs, but there were still 5 to 10% of NAs left, and we couldn't figure out like what's happening. Why is this not working all the way through? So we did spend a lot of time just troubleshooting how to process the data. And eventually this afternoon, after spending a little more time trying to do that, we transitioned into using the prepared data. And there the variables that we were interested in before with grit weren't there, not all of them. So we had to change our framing a little bit for how we wanted to analyze this model. And we tried first also like some groups plotting the data. So I will show that. So just looking at our outcome variables, so seeing that it's all kind of messy, maybe not predicted the best with the linear model, but interesting. And we did it once more and saw a similar kind of thing. And we're like, okay, we'll go with a linear model. Saw that our outputs were pretty low in terms of how well they were predicting. The R-square values were really low. And then near like the last 20 minutes, we were like, let's look at variables that we're trying to predict, because we're trying to predict all 6 in the end. Like, oh, they're binary. Maybe linear model isn't the best. We should be using logistic models for them. So spent some time also trying to run logistics for that. And ultimately looked up and ran some multivariate models where we had all of the predictors there and got outcomes for everything, but realized in trying to upload to the site that some of the outcome variables had NAN themselves. So when we had these multivariate predictions happening, we actually didn't have values for every single cell that would be possible. So I don't know, lots of things to like think through, and lots of struggles, but it was a good process to like think through like different ways of doing it. And we did have like an outcome variable with all of the predictors included. So I think we made a lot of progress and had some output, even if it wasn't for every single row.
Thank you, Troy and Regina. Okay, we're going to go to our last team, which is Team Fufu. Please go ahead and turn your cameras on so we can spotlight you, Team Fufu.
Hello, I think, can I spotlight myself?
I don't think so.
I cannot.
Troy, there you go. Troy, I think you need to turn, we turned off Troy's camera. Okay, so go take it away.
Good, I think it's just me because I know Ebony's not able to turn her camera on today. So we rode the struggle bus from 7 a.m. right until the breakout rooms closed for the wrap up. So we spent the morning kind of figuring out what we were even doing, what was going on. And then in the second half or second portion of the day, we decided to just use the prepared data and not struggle with the cleaning and tidying anymore. So we decided to look at a couple different things. We wanted to look at grit as a function of race and see if race is predictive of grit. And then also GPA as a function of the language test, the PPVT. And so what we ended up doing was just running a couple of models based on that. And we aggregated we made an average PPVT score. I don't know if that was the best way to do it, but we wanted to be able to include all of the scores. And then we visualized the data. We didn't really get to see how well it actually predicted the outcomes, but that's kind of where we left off. And then suddenly the break rooms closed, or the breakout rooms closed.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the exercise today. More information will be forthcoming on how we did vis-a-vis other teams in other locations over the weekend. So feel free to keep an eye on the leaderboard and also know that there will be more information on how things went on Monday. So I want to keep us on as close to on time as possible. So we allowed a little bit longer there to make sure all of our teams fit in and to accommodate our one undergraduate and recent alum team. So I thank you all for your patience there. I will try to speed through our debrief and logistics so we can spend the majority of our time handling the deletion of data and also our data assurance, just making sure we've gotten everything done to close out for the week. So I'm going to try my best to get us done before 5 o'clock because it is Friday, right? So we'll try to get that done. So Amber, can you do me the favor of dropping our anonymous pulse survey into the chat box? Thank you very much. Amanda or Amber, please go ahead and drop our anonymous pulse survey into the chat box. So we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts on today, but if there are things that have popped up that you thought over the course of the entire week, please let us know those things too. We will look at that over the weekend and report back to you next week. We're also going to remind you that the takeaway sheet for day 5, as well as 4, 3, 2, and 1 are now posted on the website. Please feel free to go in there and make edits. We will commit edits at the end of every day and hope that it will be a sort of a living, organic representation of what happened here. So please feel free to do that. That's on the website now. I'm also excited to tell you that we are officially launching signups for Q&A for our speakers next week. So we'll do our first 4 speakers in no particular order. Our guest speakers being Naomi Sugi, Chris Wheat, Laura Nelson, and Ruha Benjamin. So we're looking for people excited about doing Q&A with them. Again, it's always nice to hear other voices besides mine. So we're looking for people for Q&A. So the videos for all of those are already posted for next week. That's in addition to the lunchtime speakers. So our lunchtime speakers are still at lunch, and those will be held from 4 to 5 o'clock in the evenings, and then 5 to 5:30 we'll have slots for office hours. So we'll offer 3 separate 10-minute slots, and we're going to break them up so everybody has a chance to go once into one of those 10-minute slots. Into one of those 10-minute slots. So don't worry. There'll be a slot for you there if you'd like to do a small group Q&A with our speakers. That will be possible. We'll announce as we get closer what's going on with Timnit Gebru, who is our SICSS-Howard Mathematica 2021 keynote speaker, as well as our plenary speaker. We'll do Q&A with our plenary speaker also. So stay tuned for those, but please go ahead and jump in and start choosing who you'd like to ask questions of. We're going to try to prioritize as many voices as possible. You've got the weekend to maybe choose a video or two there and figure out who you want to ask questions of. Welcome to do more than one, but let's make sure everybody gets in at least to their first choice. I wanted to make sure we thanked our TAs. Some of them are still here in the room. So that would be Nadia, Nancy, Aaron, Peter, Emma, Hayawete, Hanzi, Matt. We also had Matan here with us today. Special guests, we had special guests also today. We had Rabu and also Raymond were with us today. I may have messed up some of our TAs there. If I've missed anyone, please drop a note in the chat box, Amanda. I think this is the list for yesterday. Please drop a note in the chat box of the names of the other TAs that joined us today. We want to make sure we thank everyone, all our Mathematica TAs. Our event staff, Amanda, Amber, Ava, and Christina were with us today. We may see Maddie next week also. I also wanted to share a little bit of information about what's going to happen next week. You'll get more information over the weekend. But you know, the culmination of this 2-week institute is the opportunity to propose research towards a peer-reviewed paper in a group. Notice I said group, did not say individual. In a group, a collaborative group across folks here, and put that proposal forward to be potentially funded by our host institutions, Mathematica and Howard. So we will provide greater detail on that over the weekend. You are not behind at this point if you don't know what you want to do. If you have some ideas, you're welcome to reach out to people over the weekend, but just know that this will all start in earnest on Monday. So we'll do an exercise to help you better understand the background and interests of everybody here, so that you can make decisions about who you might want to work with in what group or what groups. So that's a possibility too. You may want to get involved in more than one project, fine too. So Meredith and I spent a little bit of time together today. She asked me some of these questions, so I want to make sure I tell you. So there is funding for multiple teams. We are looking for groups of folks. Again, you do not have to have this figured out. If you want to reach out to people, you can. We are going to, of course, be looking for you to be using computational social science. If you have a sense relatively early next week what kind of support you need to do this. I keep joking about the fact that we had Addison who knows how to build interactive dashboards. If you know what you need, if you haven't noticed, if you ask, you tend to get it. So if you let me know what you need, we can get TAs available for you next week to help you, potentially either assigning 1 or 2 to each team, depending on how many teams we have, or in the group format again. So we had a few more TAs I missed. So Carrie, Matan, Phil, and Amy. So if they're in the room, I want to make sure they know that we appreciate them deeply also. So again, you're not behind. If you want to be all strategery over the weekend, you can be all strategery over the weekend and contact people, like hashtag Black Twitter. So if you want to do that, that's fine. But you can arrive on Monday and be fine too. I want to make sure everyone has the same opportunity to do well and get funds here. As I've mentioned, I didn't feel that way in my session. It seemed like some people knew stuff and some people didn't. So I want to make sure everybody knows everything. All right, before we jump into deletion of data and data assurance, and if you have already deleted the data, you're in excellent shape. But just a reminder that we are trying to make sure that none of that data is on your personal computer. Please also know that if you're using RStudio or other platforms, and have loaded that data into that, make sure you delete it from there also. So you are always going to have access. Always is a strong word. You will have access after this from OPC to this data set and many others. So please go ahead and make sure that you take the time to delete the data. That's very important, and again, because you're collaborators, you sort of agreed to some of the various things that we've said about this data, which is you're not going to try to re-identify it, you won't share the data, et cetera, because there's a lot of folks that would love this data, but you are gaining special access to this data because of this opportunity. So I would ask that you take a few minutes. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to take a look at the anonymous survey, to take a look at our speakers and start to add yourself to the ones that you'd like to ask questions of next week, or add yourself to office hours. There's the 10-minute slots for office hours. And also, what was the last thing? There was one other thing I said. Anonymous survey, sign up sheet, delete the data, those things. So we're at 4:02, at 4:07. I think you should be able to accomplish most of those things in the next few minutes. Feel free to raise your hand so we know when you're done with those things. So we have a good sense of when we can move on to our last activity. Again, I'm sorry, this is how we're spending our Friday. With that in mind, I want to make sure I say something about Juneteenth. So I have to share our quote for the day first to end our day, which I think ties very closely back to something Nicole just mentioned about making sure you take time for theorizing. So we have a quote that was provided by Rabiu al-Hassan for us from Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, which was, "Action without thought is empty, and thought without action is blind." So taking that time to theorize, taking that time to plan is very important. And Dr. Kwame Nkrumah is with us on that, it sounds like. So I want to mention a couple things which we'll put up on Slack about Juneteenth. So as many of you know, on Thursday, President Biden signed into law a bill creating a holiday to commemorate Juneteenth. The day marks the end of slavery in Texas. It is not celebrated everywhere in the United States. So I am from New York on Long Island. It was not something I found out about until I moved up to upstate New York. So it is not celebrated everywhere, but everyone will know about it, and it has the potential to be celebrated everywhere. Because June 19th falls on a Saturday this year, most federal employees actually got today off. So thank you, all of you, for coming. I don't know if you're oh, it sounds like VA made it a holiday last year. Okay, so we're all just following in VA's footsteps. So another thing I want to share with you that I'm quite proud of, a colleague of mine at Berkeley. So she wrote the following, and I want to share that with you while you finish off your surveys and such. So this Saturday is Juneteenth, the day that commemorates when the last group of enslaved people were freed in Texas, 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. So that colleague of mine, Jasmine Sanders, co-authored a Harvard Business Review article that explains the significance of this historical event and how organizational leaders can use this moment to uphold and further their DEI commitments. She says, with yesterday's congressional legislation to establish Juneteenth as a National Independence Day as a U.S. federal holiday, our aim now more than ever is to impress upon organizations the importance of meaningful and thoughtful commemoration of Juneteenth, not celebrations that tokenize Black employees or signal hollow recognition. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in the next few days. And we know the difference between real and tokenized and just, folks doing things for the sake of performance. This requires organizations reckoning with and addressing the lack of diversity in corporate leadership, pushing particularly non-Black employees to use Juneteenth not as a day off, but as a day on to increase their awareness of systemic racism and oppression in America, and urging companies to not flatten employees to one identity, rather to embrace the complexity and beauty of intersectionality. So that's my colleague and classmate, Jasmine. And we're going to put up her article along with that statement into Slack so you can see that. And the name of that article is How Your Organization Can Recognize Juneteenth. It's with her and Ella F. Washington. So with that in mind, with my deepest apologies that we weren't able to turn on anything fun here, we're going to head into data assurance now. I'm so sorry. So one of the TAs from the main site, Brian, is going to join us and help out and make sure that we're all set. With that, so let me just make him co-host and get him all set up here to make sure that we finish our data assurance. Okay. All right, Brian, thank you. I'll unspotlight myself.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. Yep, we can
Okay,
hear you.
okay. All right. Just been it's been a Friday. I just want to say that, you know, going through technical issues and everything like that. But we're gonna make the best of things and everything like that. So first and foremost, I want to say welcome to everybody, you know, for being here on a Friday, you know, and it is Juneteenth. Tomorrow, most people had off today, but you know, I'm like Nanette. I'm one of those who live in upstate New York, and we don't have that day recognized yet. You know, hopefully will be soon. You know, but however, you know, we just try and make the best of it. You know, as best as we can. And what we're gonna do for you today is try and make the best of it for you. So I'm just getting my presentation up on the screen shortly. Bear with me for a moment. Like I said, I'm having a camera issue, but I think we are all set to go. Can everybody see my visuals going on? Are we clear? I know people are wondering.
You are spotlighted.
Okay, I'm spotlighted. Does everybody know what's going on right now?
We
People
got
still-
we got a DJ, y'all. We're having a dance party.
Okay, so now I can get out my professional voice and I can welcome everybody to the official Juneteenth turn up for y'all. We're gonna get it started a little something like this though.
Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.